Plans are afoot to create the world's biggest defence company. But would a tie-up between BAE and EADS be a merger too far?
Things are building in the world of defence and aerospace. News of the potential merger of BAE, Europe's largest military contractor, and EADS, the region's biggest aerospace company, has stirred emotions from Berlin to Washington. The possibility of a pan-European defence company with sales potentially topping 72 billion euros and the ability to more convincingly take on the US market are moving closer to reality. The 35 billion euro tie-up is being touted as a strategic move, but big hurdles stand in the way, not least the politics. Germany, France and the UK all have significant interests in the commercial and domestic impact of both companies. There's wide scope for each player to voice security concerns. The US in particular, which provides almost half of BAE's business, is deeply suspicious of France and will want additional assurances that their most sensitive projects can't be leaked to the outside world. And it's not only governments, but investors still need to be persuaded of the mega-merger. There's still much work to be done, but executives have hinted that progress is being made and that more details will be coming soon.
Hello and welcome back to Analysis Review. With me today to look at the issues surrounding what might be the biggest merger since the financial crisis are Carola Hoyos, the FT's defence correspondent, and Vincent Boland from our Lex team. Carola, start with you. We were just listening to that clip of yours there. You talked of sort of strategic rationale for this. Just tell us a bit more. How and why did we get to where we are?
Well, BAE is a pure defence company, and it's not a good time to be in that spot. There are defence cuts in the US and in the UK. They're digging very deep into what BAE can do. They're pretty much out of growth opportunities. And on the flip side, you've got aerospace, commercial aerospace, doing very well. And of course, EADS's Airbus is its biggest program. And so that has created a setup where Tom Enders, who's the CEO, new CEO of EADS, can finally, in one swoop, do what he's been wanting to do by 2020, which is balance out his portfolio and be both a defence player and a commercial aerospace player, so that when the cycles come up and down, you have a smoother ride for the whole thing.
You mentioned there's political obstacles, there's also some concern among investors, and we'll get Vincent in on that in a sec. But I mean, of the two, which are the most daunting, do you think, in your assessment now?
That's a good question. I think the most daunting situation is in the US, and we've just heard Boeing say that it's looking at this very carefully. Obviously, this new company would be a huge competitor to Boeing, and they have a lot of political influence.
Just to show you there the picture of Linda Hudson,
yes,
who I think heads the operations of BAE in Washington, a very formidable person in the whole sector there.
She is, and she's got her work cut out for her. She has to persuade the US government that it's in their national interest to allow this merger to happen, and that no Frenchman is going to be able to look in, quite literally actually. I mean, we laugh, but it is also about the nationality of the people working at the US company, that they will not be able to have a look in into some of the most sensitive programs in the US.
Vincent, just tell us, but when investors look in on the specifics of this deal, I mean, what are they seeing? Because I mean, I think the share prices didn't react to give it such a favourable reception, did they?
No,
I mean, we've got the chart here.
Exactly. I mean, you can see that there was a little bit of a spike in BAE Systems share price when this was announced, and a bit of a fall in the share price of EADS. But I think the big problem for investors here so far is that there is no information. All we have is an announcement that a merger is being discussed, and beyond that, everybody's in the dark. So I think that investors hate that kind of thing. So there's been very little reaction so far, and I think that certainly from my conversations with investors and with people in the City of London, for example, I think that there's a response that ranges from okay, fine, we're ready to accept it, to I think this is probably a step too much for both companies. But until the details come out, we won't know.
And just quickly, why we haven't got the details? Because essentially this was leaked.
Exactly, and the two companies were about 2 weeks from actually finalising things and making an announcement, and there was an awful lot of work to be done in those 2 weeks that they're still working on. You know, who's going to run it, where's it going to be based, you know, what will be the dynamic between London and Paris, between Europe and the US, you know, all that kind of thing has to come out.
And the golden share, of course.
And the golden shares.
I mean, golden share, the blocking share.
Exactly,
that
because
hold,
Germany and France both have big stakes in EADS, directly and indirectly. The British government has a golden share, so-called, in BAE Systems. And all of those things have to be worked out, and they're very, very important, particularly in getting it through in Washington.
So if it were to happen, I mean, what would we be, I mean, you both addressed sort of some of how it might look. I mean, just sort of walk us through sort of what would we be looking at? Maybe Vincent, you tell us a bit of sort of the revenues, and Carola tell us about, you know, what type of company we're looking at. Here we've got some charts for
I mean,
you.
at the moment, what you have is BAE Systems, which is a company that's split roughly 50-50 in revenue terms between US defence contracts and European and Middle Eastern and Indian defence contracts. So you have it's a very global company, and EADS is, you know, it's the world's joint #1 maker of commercial airplanes. So it's all over it's a very big manufacturer and seller of airplanes, except perhaps in the US. So what would happen if the two of them came together is you'd have a very balanced company between one, you know, it'd be roughly half and half commercial aerospace and defence. Right.
And quickly, Carola, just tell us, you know, what type of company. So, I mean, you alluded earlier on, a more balanced company. I think this is quite a striking illustration.
I think the reason why BAE is in a situation it's in is very aptly illustrated here. It's a pure defence play, and it's not a good time to be. One thing that I wanted to put in is that quite a few people and investors in BAE are saying this is the worst time for them to do this. They are at the nadir of their influence, and actually perhaps in a year or two the situation may flip, as it was just a few years ago when BAE was bigger than EADS.
Right. Just finally to both of you, I mean, looking at both companies, but particularly EADS, it hasn't always been a happy ship for some of the reasons that you've addressed. There's the political thing, there's the sort of stuff that it spans various countries and so on. I mean, is this deal would just make it worse, wouldn't it? Or have those differences now been ironed out under Tom Enders?
Well, there are two really important things Enders wants to be able to do. One is get rid of the day-to-day influence of France and Germany, and that can not be a bad thing. He thinks it's going to be easier to run the company that way. And two, get into the US, which he hasn't been able to do, and really compete with Boeing and also on the defense side. Not sure if he's going to manage that, but with BAE's portfolio there, he does take a big step towards it.
Okay, I'm afraid we've run out of time, but I wanted to ask you finally, put you both on the spot. Do you think this is going to happen? Vincent?
Yes, I do. I think that I think this is, if it has to be done, now is the time to do it. And I think that both companies will get the political backing ultimately after making lots of concessions.
Carola?
60-40.
Okay,
yes.
So room for both of you to still clear up some details. Thank you both, Carola Hoyos, Vincent Boland, and thank you for watching. To read more about this and other topics covered by our analysis team, please go to ft.com/analysis. Until the next time, goodbye.